I arrived at my Washington home just as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the porch, but something was off. The front door stood slightly ajar, the lock hanging loose like a forgotten promise. My heart hammered as I stepped inside, the familiar scent of aged wood and lavender replaced by an unsettling stillness. My son's voice echoed from the living room, low and steady, though his words cut sharper than any raised tone could. "It's for the best, Mom. You don't need all this stuff anymore." I froze in place, clutching my handbag as if it could anchor me to reality. The stuff he referred to wasn't just clutter to be discarded. It was the fabric of my life, woven from decades of memories, sacrifices, and love. Yet here I was, an intruder in my own home, watching as my son moved through the rooms with the detached efficiency of a stranger clearing out a storage unit. He hadn't seen me yet, but I could hear the rustle of plastic and the snap of tape as boxes were sealed, the faint scrape of furniture being dragged across the floor. My breath caught when I recognized the unmistakable sound of my grandmother's china cabinet door snapping shut. That cabinet had stood in our dining room for nearly 50 years, a silent witness to countless family dinners, holiday gatherings, and whispered secrets. I stepped forward, my voice barely more than a whisper. "What are you doing?" He turned abruptly, his eyes flickering with surprise before settling into a practiced calm. "Mom, I told you it's for the best. You don't need all these things holding you back." "Holding me back?" My voice cracked. "These things are part of my life. Part of my story." He shrugged, a gesture so casual it felt like a slap. "You're stuck in the past. Maybe it's time to let go." I watched as he waved a hand toward the pile of my belongings stacked near the doorway, boxes labeled with my name but stripped of any care or reverence. My favorite armchair, once the seat where I read to my children and later to my grandchildren, was now upside down, its cushions torn open and forgotten. The shelves that had held my collection of first editions were empty, as if the stories themselves had fled. "Did you even ask me?" I ventured, the shock giving way to a quiet anger. "Did you think to call me before you started packing up my life?" He looked away, his jaw tightening. "You weren't answering your phone. And honestly, Mom, you've been so withdrawn lately. I thought you'd appreciate a fresh start." "A fresh start?" I echoed, disbelief twisting in my chest. "By throwing away everything I've held on to? By erasing the past as if it never mattered?" He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You don't have to carry all this weight anymore. You're not the same woman who filled these rooms." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I'm still me. These things, these memories, they anchor me. Without them, I'm adrift." He shook his head, frustration flickering across his face. "I'm trying to help, Mom. You just don't see it." The room felt suddenly colder, the walls closing in as the gulf between us widened. I realized then that this wasn't just about belongings. It was about respect, about acknowledgement, about the invisible chasm that had been growing between us for years. My son, once my closest companion, now seemed like a stranger intent on rewriting my story without my consent. I sank into the nearest chair, the one remaining untouched by his purge, and fought back tears. The weight of betrayal settled heavy on my shoulders, a bitter companion to the loss I was already feeling. How had it come to this? My own child deciding what parts of my life were worth saving. From the kitchen, I heard the clatter of a plate being set down roughly. My daughter-in-law appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. "We thought it would be easier this way," she said softly. "Less clutter, less stress." I looked up, meeting her gaze, searching for some hint of understanding, some flicker of compassion. But there was only polite detachment, a shield against the discomfort of witnessing the fracture in our family. "I'm still here," I whispered, more to myself than to them. "I'm still alive, and these things belong to me." Her eyes flicked away, and she nodded as if to say, "We know. But you don't belong here anymore." In that moment I felt invisible, erased by the very people who should have been my refuge. The house, once a sanctuary filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a museum exhibit stripped bare. My presence reduced to a ghost lingering in the corners. I reached for my phone and dialed my daughter's number, needing a lifeline to someone who might understand. As the call connected, I glanced around one last time at the empty shelves and barren walls, the hollow echoes of a life dismantled without my consent. "Mom, are you okay?" My daughter's voice trembled through the receiver. No, I admitted, my voice breaking. They're packing up my life, and I don't know where I fit anymore. She promised to come, to help me gather what was left and find a way forward. But as I hung up, the ache of betrayal settled deeper into my bones. This was not just about things, it was about being seen, being valued, and being heard. And right now, in this house stripped of warmth and memory, I felt none of those things. I sat there for hours, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting the room into shadows that mirrored my own despair. My son's footsteps came and went, the sounds of his work a harsh reminder that my world was changing without my permission. I clung to the hope that we could mend this, but the fear that I was losing him, and myself, gnawed at my heart. The night crept in, and with it, a silence heavier than any words could break. I was left alone, surrounded by the emptiness of my possessions, and the coldness of a family that seemed to have forgotten what it meant to hold on to each other. In this fractured home I faced the painful truth. Sometimes the deepest wounds come not from strangers, but from the ones we love the most. I sat alone in the dim light of my stripped-down living room, the silence pressing in around me like a weight. My son's actions had left the house hollow, but what truly pained me was the emptiness inside. A void where our bond used to live. As I traced the dust patterns on the bare shelves, memories flooded back, each one tied to the things now missing, each one a thread unraveling in the fabric of my life. That old armchair, now tossed aside, had been my refuge for years. I remembered curling up in it with my youngest son when he was just a boy, reading aloud from dog-eared storybooks, his small hands clutching mine as the characters came alive. It was where I had nursed him through fevers and heartbreaks, where laughter and tears had mingled in the quiet evenings. To him it was just furniture, but to me it was a vessel of love and comfort. I thought of the china cabinet, now locked and empty, a silent testament to generations. My grandmother had passed down those delicate plates, each one hand-painted, each one a story of resilience and heritage. I had polished them every Sunday, careful with the fine porcelain, preserving the legacy that had been entrusted to me. The cabinet had been more than wood and glass. It was a shrine to the women who came before me, their struggles and triumphs etched into every curve. The bookshelves, cleared bare, once held my collection of first editions, gifts from my husband on anniversaries and birthdays. Each volume was a chapter of our shared life, a testament to dreams and quiet ambitions. I had imagined passing them down to my grandchildren, hoping they'd find in those pages a glimpse of the world as I saw it, complex, beautiful, and full of possibility. Now all that was gone, or at least out of sight, packed away without ceremony or consent. The loss felt like more than just physical, it was a wound to my identity. These objects had been anchors, reminders of who I was and where I came from. Without them I felt untethered, adrift in a sea of loneliness. I recalled the day my son was born, how I held him in my arms, swearing silently to protect him from all harm. Over the years I had poured myself into raising him, sacrificing my own needs so he could thrive. I remembered the countless nights spent awake, soothing his fears, the hours spent at school events, the whispered prayers when he faced challenges I could not solve. Each moment was woven into the fabric of my being, and many of those memories were tied to the rooms now emptied of their meaning. As I reflected, I realized how much these possessions symbolized the love and labor invested in our family. They were the physical manifestations of time spent together, of patience and hope. Their absence was a stark reminder of how that connection was fraying, slipping through my fingers like sand. I thought about the widening distance between my son and me over the past few years, the quiet misunderstandings, the unspoken resentments that had built walls between us. Our conversations had grown shorter, more guarded, smiles less frequent, replaced by tension and avoidance. I tried to reach him, to bridge the gap, but each attempt seemed to push us further apart. There were moments when I wondered if I had failed him, if my love had not been enough to keep us close. But now, seeing his disregard for the very things that held our history, I questioned whether he even understood the depth of what he was discarding. The ache of loss was not just for objects but for a relationship slipping away, for the boy I once knew who had grown into a man who no longer saw me as the mother who had stood by him through every storm. It was the grief of being sidelined, of becoming invisible in the life I had nurtured. I found myself clutching a faded photograph that had somehow survived the purge, a snapshot of my son as a toddler, grinning with that mischievous spark that had once lit up our home. The edges were worn, the colors faded, but the memory it held was vivid and alive. I traced his face with trembling fingers, longing for the days when his smile was a balm to my soul. Tears spilled over, not just for the loss of things but for the erosion of trust and intimacy. The home that had once been a sanctuary now felt like a gallery of absence, each empty corner echoing the silence between us. In the quiet, I asked myself how we had come to this point, where love was measured against possessions, and where respect was sacrificed for convenience. I grappled with the realization that my son's actions, though perhaps well-intentioned, had betrayed a profound misunderstanding of what mattered most to me. I thought back to the times we had shared, the milestones celebrated under this roof, the laughter that once filled these rooms. Those memories were my inheritance now, fragile and vulnerable, threatened by the very hands that should have protected them. As night deepened, I wrapped myself in a shawl, seeking comfort in its familiar warmth. I held tight to the hope that beneath the layers of hurt and confusion, there remained a connection worth fighting for. But I knew that before any healing could begin, the wounds had to be acknowledged, the losses mourned. I whispered into the dark, a prayer for understanding, for patience, for the chance to rebuild what had been broken. The house was empty, but my heart was full of stories. Stories I was not yet ready to let go. The next morning, with a heaviness still settling in my chest, I found my son in the kitchen, stacking the last few boxes with the same mechanical precision I had grown to dread. The sunlight streaming through the window caught in the dust motes, casting a harsh spotlight on the tension between us. I stood at the threshold, gathering the courage to speak, the words lodged deep, aching to be released. "I need to understand," I began cautiously, voice trembling. "Why did you do this? Why did you decide to pack up my life without even asking me?" He looked up, eyes weary but steady, as if prepared for this confrontation all along. "Mom, I thought it would help you," he said simply. "You've been so weighed down by things from the past. I wanted to lighten your load." I searched his face for any sign of remorse, of empathy, but found only conviction. "Help me," I echoed, bitter disbelief coloring my tone. "By taking what's mine? By deciding I don't need the memories that keep me grounded?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration and helplessness. "I know it looks harsh, but I meant well. You've been holding on to so much, things, memories, pain. I thought if I cleared the clutter, you'd have space to breathe." Space to breathe. The words felt like a slap. "You don't get to decide what I need. These things aren't just clutter. They're pieces of my life, of us. You're erasing parts of me without a second thought." He hesitated, his usual confidence faltering for a moment. "I didn't think of it that way. I just wanted to protect you, to help you move forward." I shook my head, the hurt twisting in my gut. "Protect me? From what? From my own past? From the life I've lived? You see this as kindness, but it feels like betrayal." He looked down at his hands, the weight of my words settling on him. "Maybe I was wrong," he admitted quietly, "but it's hard to watch you retreat into memories that keep you from living now." The room felt charged with unspoken truths, the chasm between us widening as we grappled with different realities. I realized then that his actions, though misguided, stemmed from a place of concern, a concern that had somehow been misdirected and poorly expressed. "I don't want to be stuck," I said softly, "but letting go isn't as simple as clearing out a room. These memories are part of who I am. Without them, I'm lost." He nodded slowly, the harsh edges of his resolve softening. "I didn't understand that before. I thought I was helping, but maybe I was just trying to fix something I didn't know how to fix." A silence stretched between us, heavy with regret and the fragile beginnings of understanding. I wanted to believe this was a turning point, a chance to bridge the divide that had grown too wide. But the path ahead felt uncertain, fraught with wounds that needed time to heal. "Can we talk about this?" I asked, hope threading through my words. "Not just about the things, but about us, about what's been lost and what might still be saved." He met my gaze, vulnerability flickering in his eyes. "I want that too, Mom. I don't want to lose you." For a moment I saw the son I had raised, the boy who had once clung to my hand in fear and joy, who had trusted me implicitly. The man before me was struggling, trying to do right but stumbling in the dark. "I'm willing to try," I said, reaching out to touch his arm. "But it has to be together. No more decisions made without me. He nodded, a tentative smile breaking through. Agreed. We'll figure this out. As the morning light filled the kitchen, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't dared hope for. A chance to mend what had been broken. To find each other again amid the rubble of misunderstanding. The journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in weeks I believed it might be possible. That evening the house felt different. Still heavy with unspoken words but charged with a fragile hope. My son and I sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the air thick but less suffocating than before. The boxes remained packed, untouched for the first time since his arrival, as if the pause between us was a silent truce. I want to understand. I began, voice steady but soft. Not just why you did what you did, but what you were feeling. What was going on inside you when you started packing up my life? He looked down, fingers tracing the grain of the table. I guess I was scared, he confessed. Scared that you were holding on so tightly to the past that you were shutting out the present. That you were isolating yourself, and I didn't know how to reach you. His words surprised me. Not the admission of fear, but the raw honesty behind it. For years, beneath his confident exterior, I had sensed a distance growing between us, but hearing him voice it was both painful and relieving. When you said I needed a fresh start, did you mean to push me away? I asked cautiously. He shook his head quickly. No. I wanted to pull you closer, but I did it the wrong way. Instead of asking, I acted. I thought clearing the clutter would clear the space for us to reconnect. I swallowed hard, the weight of his intentions clashing with the damage done. But those things aren't just clutter to me. Each one holds a memory, a piece of my identity. When you packed them away, it felt like you were packing away parts of me. He met my gaze then, eyes glistening with unshed tears. I didn't realize how much they meant. I was so focused on what I thought you needed that I forgot to ask what you wanted. The room seemed to shrink as we shared this moment of vulnerability. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a faded photograph, the one of him as a toddler smiling with that mischievous spark. This is what I hold on to, I said. Not just the objects but the stories they carry. The laughter, the love, the sacrifices. He took the photo gently, his fingers brushing mine. I see now. I was so wrapped up in trying to fix things that I didn't see the history we share. The foundation beneath it all. I nodded, feeling a warmth I hadn't in weeks. I need you to understand that my memories aren't chains, they're roots. They ground me. Remind me of who I am and where I come from. He sighed, a breath of relief mingled with regret. I want to be part of that, not erase it. I'm sorry for the pain I caused. It wasn't fair to you. Tears welled in my eyes, but I forced a smile. And I'm sorry for shutting you out, for letting the silence grow between us. Maybe we both lost sight of how to hold on. He reached across the table and took my hand, the gesture simple but profound. Can we start over? Not erase what happened, but learn from it. I squeezed his hand, feeling the fragile bridge rebuilding between us. Yes, but it has to be a partnership. No more decisions made without talking. No more assumptions. He nodded, a newfound respect in his eyes. Agreed. We'll find a way back together. As the night deepened, we talked about the past, the pain, and the hope that still lingered beneath the wounds. We shared stories long buried, laughed at forgotten moments, and acknowledged the scars that had shaped us. The house, though still bare in places, felt a little more like home. In that quiet kitchen, amid the remnants of what was and the promise of what could be, I realized that healing wasn't about erasing the past but embracing it, together. In the weeks that followed, I found myself slowly reclaiming more than just the physical space in my home. I was reclaiming my story, piece by piece, memory by memory. The boxes my son had packed remained untouched, a silent reminder of the fracture we were mending, but also a testament to the respect we were building anew. I began inviting friends over again, the familiar faces and warm laughter breathing life back into rooms that had felt hollow and cold. Over cups of tea and shared stories, I found strength in vulnerability, revealing the pain of being overlooked and the quiet resilience that had carried me through. Their support became a balm, reminding me that my worth was not defined by objects or the approval of others, but by the stories I lived and shared. Together, my son and I started to unpack. Not just the boxes, but the layers of misunderstanding and hurt. We took turns telling stories tied to each item, From the delicate china passed down by my grandmother to the worn armchair where he had once sat as a child. Each narrative became a thread weaving us closer, stitching the tears in our relationship with newfound understanding. In reclaiming my belongings on my own terms, I also reclaimed my identity. I arranged the shelves thoughtfully, placing treasured books where light could catch their spines, and displayed photographs that captured moments of joy and growth. The house transformed from a museum of loss into a living archive of love, sacrifice, and resilience. Beyond the walls of my home, I found purpose in sharing my journey with other women who had felt invisible or erased in their own lives. I started a foundation dedicated to empowering women to own their histories and voices, to find strength in their stories, and to build communities of support. Each meeting, each conversation, reaffirmed the power of patience and persistence, the importance of waiting for the right moment to reclaim what was rightfully ours. I hung a small sign by the front door, simple but bold. This house was reclaimed by a story told and a voice heard. It was a declaration, a reminder that I had moved beyond being a shadow cast aside, stepping into the light of my own narrative. A drawing from my grandson found its place on the mantel, a colorful swirl of lines and shapes that, to me, symbolized hope and continuity. It reminded me daily that despite the fractures, love endures, and the next generation carries forward the legacy we build. There were still moments when the ache of betrayal surfaced, a flicker of doubt or sadness. But I met those moments with the knowledge that I had survived, that I had been patient and strong enough to wait for the right moment to reclaim my story. It was a journey marked not by bitterness but by grace, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. I had been buried beneath assumptions, dismissed and erased, but I was no longer silent. My voice, once quiet and overshadowed, now carried the weight of truth and experience. I shared it openly, knowing that every woman deserves to be heard, valued, and seen. In reclaiming my story, I reclaimed myself, and in doing so, I found a peace that no loss could take away.